By 6 p.m. on this Good Friday, all the principals were headed somewhere. Booth to an alley that led behind Ford's to stable his mare. He collected 3 stagehands, and to Tateville's bar they went for a drink. He bought them a bottle of whiskey, and then slipped back into the theater. He picked up a 1.5-inch by 3-inch pine board that held a music stand. On the dress circle level, he moved to the white door that led to the hallway, opened it with ease, and then shut it behind him. He wedged the board just above the knob and into the wall by gouging plaster from it. Then he collected fragments from his gouging, put them in a kerchief, and placed the board in a dark corner near the door. He noted that the locks to the presidential box were broken. Inside box 7, he walked between the rocking chair intended for the president and Mrs. Lincoln's chair. He gauged the distance from the ledge to the floor. He thought he could swing over the ledge, hook onto the ledge with his hands, and then allow himself to drop to the stage. Back out in the hallway, he made use of a gimlet. He drilled a small hole in the right corner of the upper panel, the view blurry, but he could see the upper part of the rocker. A penknife opened the hole and cleared the view. Careful to retrieve the shavings, he lit matches to see and scooped up the shavings. Then he left. No one saw or heard, and he slipped back to the National Hotel to eat and rest. About 9:30, Booth slipped into the alley behind Ford's. Stagehand Johnny Peanut agreed to hold his mare. In through the back door, Booth bowed, smiled, and chatted to those backstage. He listened to the lines, and he knew he had some time. Down into the subterranean passage he went to the other side of the stage, and then out a side door into the alley from 10th Street. Into the tavern, Booth asked Peter Tateville for a bottle of whiskey and water. Usually it was brandy. Down the bar from him was Burns, the coachman, Parker, the guard, and joining them, Lincoln's valet, Charles Forbes. A voice stabbed from the back of the bar. "You'll never be the actor your father was." Booth smiled, nodded, and said quietly, "When I leave the stage, I will be the most famous man in America." It was 10 p.m., and outside the clouds began to break. The moon, just past full, was to rise at 10:02. George Atzerodt rode back to the Kirkwood house. By his hand he was to assassinate Andrew Johnson, but his feet took him to the bar. That was as close to completing his task as he would be that night. Booth stepped out of Tateville's and coolly chatted with an officer in the Washington Cavalry Police. Declining a drink with him, he said, "Keene will be on stage in a minute, and I promised to take a look for her." And so, via the front door, he entered Ford's. It was 10:07. Inside, he said hello to ticket taker John Buckingham, borrowed a bit of tobacco from him. Buckingham wanted to introduce him to some friends, but Booth winked and said, "Later, John." With that, Booth bounded up the stairs and moved around the back of the dress circle. Slowing to hear the lines, he knew he had about 2 minutes. It was then he saw the guard's empty chair. He was relieved, for there would be no struggle. Booth pushed open the white door and moved into the darkness. Closing it behind him, he found the pine board he had stashed earlier and wedged it above the doorknob and into the notch he had carved. Now he moved toward the unlocked door that led to the presidential box. A shaft of yellow light streamed through the hole he had made earlier in the door. It made a dot on the opposite wall. On stage, Mrs. Mount Chessington had just learned that Asa Trenchard was not a millionaire. There was laughter. Almost holding his breath, Booth heard, "Augusta, to your room." "Yes, Ma, the nasty beast." she continued. "I am aware, Mr. Trenchard, that you are not used to the manners of good society." Booth looked through the hole and found the horsehair rocker and the silhouette of a head above it. Now Trenchard, portrayed by Harry Hawk, was on stage alone. "Don't know the manners of good society, eh?" Booth did not wait for the next line. He turned the doorknob. The door swung inward. He moved inside. "Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, you sock-dologizing old man-trap." The house roared with laughter. Booth's derringer was behind the president's left ear. He pulled the trigger. Lincoln's arm jerked up compulsively. His head inclined toward his chest. He stopped rocking. Still laughing, Mrs. Lincoln turned toward the noise. A blue chrysanthemum of smoke hung in the box. To those in the theater, it sounded like someone had blown up and popped a heavy paper bag. Some heard, some did not. Booth looked at the other three, and though there are conflicting accounts, one has him saying almost matter-of-factly, "Sic semper tyrannis." He pushed between the Lincolns. The First Lady wore an expression of confusion. Rathbone reacted. He lunged at Booth. Derringer dropped. Booth unsheathed his knife and plunged it deep into the Major's left arm. The blow down to the bone. Rathbone extended his right, but Booth was at the ledge now. He shoved Rathbone away and shouted loudly, "Revenge for the South!" Below, Harry Hawk faltered as Booth climbed over the ledge, turned his back to the audience, and began to let himself down over the side. As he dropped, he pushed his body away from the box with his right hand. However, turning a little, his right spur caught a Treasury flag that adorned the box. It ripped and caused him to land awkwardly on his right hand and knee. He rose and fled the stage. Major Joseph B. Stewart climbed to the rim of the stage and shouted, "Stop that man!" and gave chase. Harry Hawk, still alone at center stage, wept. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for listening to Threads from the National Tapestry. You know, each of these episodes is the result of hours and hours of research and preparation, and it means a great deal to me and our production team to see the likes, the comments, and views. Let me make clear that everything we do here will always be accessible to any who are curious to learn about the American Civil War. But we would like to ask you to consider to become a member, a Threads loyalist, if you will. For less than $5 each month, your support will help us to continue sharing our passion for that tumultuous yet important period of history. Joining is quite easy to do. At the top of each show description, you'll find a link, if you will, to join, whether you're watching, liking, commenting, or becoming a Threads loyalist. If you click on that link, your support for Threads from the National Tapestry will mean a great deal to me, to our team, and there's no question any contribution, your support, certainly makes a difference, and it's a wonderful acknowledgement for what we try to do. Thank you.